Hello YouTube, welcome from Discus of the Southwest. Today we're looking at a few of our fish here in our fish room. They're kind of new fish. We've had them about a month and they're just never seen a camera before. Today I thought we'd talk about tank size and tank shapes. It's brought up a lot that you should keep around one discus for every 10 gallons. And the recommended minimum tank size is usually around 50 to 55 gallons. Personally, unless it's in a acclimation tank or a quarantine tank or a breeder type tank, I actually a lot more, I really like the 75 gallon tanks a lot more. The reason for the 75 gallons just gives you that much more room for margin of error. In fact, the larger tank that you can afford, the bigger tank, the better. And that reason is it gives you more margin for error. You can let things get a little more, or things can get a little more out of control, and you still have time to get everything back right by doing a water change or adding some prime or something like that to help bring down ammonia levels. If something gets out of whack, you get more time to do those things. Which as, if you're in a bare minimum size, 50-55 gallon tank, and you have very high density of fish, you may not have very much time at all, if any, to get everything right. By the time you notice something on a fish, it may be too late to get everything saved. I've just done a water change on this in this tank, so they're a little bit they are a little look at the fish swimming around. Again, the larger the tank you can possibly afford is the best way to go, up to a certain point. Whereas if you're at have a 250 gallon tank, doing a 50% water change on that much water can be a daunting task, where you have to have a lot of storage places for your water while you're aging it or getting ready to use it. So if you get a very large tank, it buys you a lot more time, but also whenever you're doing water changes, it may take quite a bit more effort. I like the 75 gallon tanks because it is a happy medium. I use a lot of 75 gallon tanks or 100 and 125 gallon tanks just because a 50% water change or a 75 or 80% water change on a 75 gallon tank is a lot more doable for me, at least. And same thing on 100, 125 gallons. It's not that big a deal, especially the larger tanks. Maybe you can stretch out those water changes to a few more days. Maybe get an extra day out of it, or maybe get an extra 2 or 3 days out of it. Being said, you need to do lots of testing of your water, make sure your nitrate levels aren't getting too high, and change water accordingly. Don't try to just do it on a set schedule that you set. You got to let your tank itself set that schedule for you. Again, I like the 75 gallon tanks, 100 gallon tanks, 125 gallon tanks, because they give you a large enough volume to buy you some time in case something goes wrong. Whereas a 50 or 55 gallon tank, you're going to have to be on top of it. You're also going to have to be on top of your water changes themselves, making sure that you are changing it right on the spot from where chemically it starts getting out of a line. Again, you can keep your fish in these tanks here are 30 gallon tanks, but I've got 4 tanks connected together along with a 26 gallon sump. So out of that 26 gallon sump, probably only 20 gallons or so is used. So really I have about 140 gallons of usable water in my systems here. So it buys me a little bit of time, and I can run fairly high densities of fish. Also, the fact that I do water changes every day or twice a day allows me to run a higher density of fish in a smaller tank. If I was keeping this as a display tank, I would not be able to run as many fish in a small 30-gallon tank as I do in here. But because I do multiple water changes, I got a large sump with a very large bio filtration system on it, allows me to do that. My other tank I have is a 75-gallon tank. Keep a few less fish in them. They are larger fish, but again, I have a large bio filtration system on that tank, which allows me to, with daily water changes or every other day water changes, allows me to run a fairly high density, fairly large amount of fish in that tank. I think I've got about 11 fish in it right now. We'll look at that tank in a little bit later on maybe another video. Besides tank size, also tank shapes come to mind. I like the rectangular tanks. I also like tanks with that are deeper. Let's say a 125-inch tank or a 125-gallon tank. It's maybe 48 inches as opposed to 60 inches. 48-inch tank is going to be a thicker front to back tank, which gives you a lot more surface area for gas exchange to happen. We want to be able to have nitrogen and everything leave the tank as well as oxygen enter. And carbon dioxide also needs to leave the tank as well. If you have a thinner tank, I've seen some tanks, let's say a 90-gallon or 120-gallon tank, is very tall, but it's very thin. Aesthetically, the way it looks beautiful, but you have a smaller surface area of water, and it's a long way to the bottom of the tank, and you're going to have quite a bit of a good lifting system to lift the water from the bottom to the top, and also a larger amount of variation on the top to break the surface of the water, so you can get a good amount of gas exchange having a thinner tank like that. Now, I'm sure a lot of people can send messages or whatnot arguing that point, but that's just what I've found in the past with different people that have had those kind of tanks. They look beautiful, but you do have to make sure that your water is getting turned over from top to bottom because it is such a long way from the top. So I had a 48-inch 125 that worked real well. It was a real deep tank from front to back. It allowed for a lot of gas exchange. Really had a lot of luck with that tank. Very healthy discus that I kept in that tank. Even raised some peacock bass in that tank, with obviously not with a discus in it, but we can take a look at this other tank over here next door. We can see some pigeon bloods, and I've got some little ring leopards in there as well. But tank shapes, I like the rectangular tanks. Really, bow front tanks, and you can get a lot of surface area on the top of the water on a bow front. They work really well, and they're really beautiful tanks as well. So I have no problem with bow fronts or corner tanks. Both of them are for large surface area of water on the top to allow for good gas exchange. I don't currently have a tank shaped like those, but they sure are nice looking, beautiful tanks. And what you put in the tanks, I really like to keep it as simple as possible. I want to be able to make sure that I'm taking good care of my fish, and really that's the main thing I'm worried about, is making sure the fish are good and healthy. I don't worry about, I'd rather not have to keep up with plants or decorations or anything like that. A lot of your decorations that you have in your tanks are interesting, but a lot of your food residues from food, especially I feed a lot of beef heart and everything, tends to get sticky and stick to those things, so you have to pull those out, clean them all the time, and I just assume not have to do that. If you have a tank full of stunning, beautiful discus, hard for me to look at it and say that I wish there was some plants or something like that in there. never seen anybody walk up to a beautiful tank full of vibrant, beautiful discus and say, hey, I wish there's a lot more plants or something like that in there. I think the fish themselves are the beauty and all that. Having said that, also talk about substrates and things like that in these tanks. Again, I want to keep it simple, where I'm not having to fool around with especially cleaning them or doing water changes 2 or 3 times a day or twice a day. I go with bare bottom on all my tanks. Again, a beautiful tank with beautiful fish in it. I don't think it really needs any other kind of colored rocks or anything like that in there. A lot of people like it. I don't have a problem with it. It's just a lot easier for me to keep this density amount, this many fish in a small tank. Be very difficult to keep it good and clean and free of any uneaten food or free of any kind of feces or anything like that, if I had a whole bunch of gravel or something like that in these tanks. Just a lot easier to keep clean this way. Keeping it real simple, keeping fish in water, or keeping the water and then letting the water take care of the fish. Kind of having to chase these little fish around a little bit. They're moving. Talked about size of fish tanks. Talked about the shape of fish tanks. That's really all I really wanted to kind of go over with you on this video. Upcoming videos, we'll talk about the different kind of fish filtration systems. Also, different kind of heating solutions. What do we use and what do I use? What is your ideas as far as using in different heaters and also filters? Also, for that matter, give us some different ideas of what you like to see in your tanks, tank layouts, sizes of tanks, shapes of tanks. What do you guys think? Anyway, I'll leave you now with taking a look at these fish a little bit. This is Sam Hansen with Discus of the Southwest. We're providing high quality discus at affordable prices to our customers. And please subscribe to us so you can see upcoming videos. And tell us what you like or don't like about everything we talked about. And what are your ideas? I'd like to know what everybody else is doing. You guys have a great night.